The following podcast is an Embassy Row production.
Hey everybody, I'm Marc Lamont Hill, owner of Uncle Bobby's Coffee and Books. I am a professor, a scholar, and most importantly, a book nerd. I say book nerd because I don't just love to read books. I'm the person who loves to read about the book. I love hearing authors talk about how and why they wrote the book, and I love talking to other book nerds about their favorite books. That's why I started Coffee and Books. It's a podcast all about books. Every episode, I sit down over a cup of coffee with the world's biggest authors to discuss the most interesting, controversial, fun, or important books. And sometimes I hang out with experts, fans, and other special guests to talk about some of the greatest books of all time. And today is a big honor for me. It is a big honor for the show. We got a living legend in the building right now, and she has a new book out. It's called Bevelations, Lessons from a Mother, Auntie, Bestie.
Yes.
Bevy Smith is here. Good to see you.
I'm so happy to see you, to be with you. This is like a dream to be on your show, and it's a dream to be in Uncle Bobby's.
I love it. I'm so excited to have you on. You know, a lot of times on this show, we get people who write certain kinds of books and tell certain kinds of stories. And I said, you know, when we started the show, I wanted to tell all kinds of stories and have all kinds of people on. And this is by far the most fun book I've read. It's the most, yes, it's the most fun. It's the most funny. It's the most personable book. It's one of the most engaging books I've read that we've had. It was fun to read. And even though I know you and see you and talk to you all the time working in the industry, I learned so much about you by reading the book. And I hope that's what you wanted from people.
Yeah, that's definitely what I wanted. I wanted to set the stage for my next chapter in life. And so when you are kind of like shrouded by these personas that we build up, that really do serve us at some point in time. And then all of a sudden you find that they're kind of like gilded cages. Mm-hmm. And so I said, oh my gosh, this book is an opportunity to let people know all about me and all my different interests, also my background. And then that will open up new doors for me. And it already has. And the book has only been out for one day.
I see it everywhere. You know, obviously I have a bookstore, so I see it, but people have been coming and asking about it for the last 2 weeks. And that's a good sign. Like a lot of times people will buy a book if they see it on the shelf. But I always get excited when people don't see it on the shelf and ask about it. People did that with Michelle Obama. They did it with Tiffany Haddish. They did it with Gabrielle Union. And they're doing it with your book. And so there's a lot of energy behind this book. And I'm super excited about it. But what made you do a book? Like there's a lot of content out there. You could do videos. You could do YouTube. Why a book?
Honestly, it's because the people wanted me to do a book. It was literally everyone from people that I interact with on social media to celebrities that I've interviewed. And it was also my agents who were like, you should do a book. And when my agent said it to me, I was with CAA at the time, one of the largest talent agencies. And when she said it to me, I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I should do a book. But like you, I'm a book nerd, but I'm also older than you. And so for me, people wrote memoirs when they were in their 70s, 80s, 90s. So for me to write a book in my 50s was just like, what? Really? No, I don't. The story still has so much left to be told. But then I realized that I could just take one part of my story and tell that. And that's what I've done with Bevelations. And so once the agent said that to me and once I secured a book deal quite easily, you know, knock wood and give thanks, I was like, oh, I guess I'm writing a book now. And that's what had happened was I wrote a book.
You definitely did. And you got a book deal. And what I thought was interesting was that the book is on Andy Cohen's book imprint, which I was excited about. Obviously, you know, we got all kinds of connections. The show has a lot of professional connections to Andy and Watch What Happens. But I like Andy personally, and I like the kind of product he puts out. And I was curious to know what kind of books would come out on a book imprint from Andy Cohen. You know, and I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit worried that the book might be just about celebrity gossip, that it wouldn't be about. But then I read it, I was like, oh no, we're going to learn something today.
Yeah, we're going to learn something today. And also too, honestly, Mark, I don't really care about celebrity gossip. So on my show, my radio show, Bevelations, I literally do not ask celebrities about their personal life. I really don't care who you're sleeping with, any of that. I care about your craft. I care about how you got to where you are, those kind of things. I like origin stories. But so I don't care about who they're sleeping with. And that's why even, you know, I was talking to another interviewer and they were like, you know, it's interesting that you have slept with prominent people, but you don't name them in the book. And I was like, yeah, because it's not about that. And I certainly didn't want to be defined by the famous men that I slept with. So I'm certainly not going to name them. Also, too, I just thought it would be tawdry and tacky. So, and I didn't
Right.
need to do it to get a book deal.
Exactly. Now, I will talk trash about a tawdry and tacky book, but I will read it and take the
Right,
details.
exactly.
But that's a hard thing. I mean, was there any temptation, or not even temptation, was there any pressure from publishing industry to get you to write a different kind of book, or did they let you
No,
do whatever you wanted to do?
no. I'm so blessed and highly favored. I came in with one page of what the book would be, and they were like, "We love it. We want to buy it."
Wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
for all you book nerds and aspiring writers, Bevy is describing something almost like sitting in a diner and getting picked for like a Hollywood movie, or like
Right, exactly.
like most of a lot of people write 30, 40, 60, 100 pages to get a book proposal, and then the agent might take you, and then the publisher might read it, and then you might get a offer. But you're standing though on a reputation, you're standing on the platforms you already have, and people
Yeah.
know, and a great story, obviously, that you offer. And so I think that it's not just luck. This is a testimony to your
No.
talent and what you built.
Thank you. And most importantly, and what I think everyone can relate to, it's about relationships and how
Hmm.
you have carried yourself in this world and in this life. You know, Mark, I love and respect you so much. I love what you do. And by the time I became aware of you, I'm a very seasoned person in a lot of different spaces. So a lot of people may or may not have wanted to even take up the time to even know the new people that are coming up and buzzing and all that kind of stuff. But me, I'm the person, I always want to know what's new, what's next. And you are what's new, what's next, what's hot. And so I have a real vested interest in making sure that I'm up to date on what's going on. And so
Mm.
what that means is that my relationships span from an 80-year-old multimillionaire who lives on the Upper East Side to a young ASAP Ferg. You know what I mean? My
Yep.
relationships span that kind of thing. And I think that that's something that I really wanted to get across in the book too, is that, you know, a lot of times we talk about networking. And I don't like to use the term networking because I feel that it's predatory. Instead, I like to connect with people in an organic way. So when I meet Marc Lamont Hill, because I've heard so much about him and I've seen him on TV, I'm meeting him not because I'm angling to get something out of him. There's nothing for me to get out of Marc Lamont Hill initially, right?
Right, right, right.
Because at that point, when I meet you, you don't have this podcast. You're not doing all the TV that you're doing, all of that.
Right.
But you are hella smart. You have an
Mm.
incredible point of view. So I want to just know you. And then, of course, it turns out you're a winner. So yes, you do have platforms. And now you can help me promote my book. Look at that. But if I had been
Hmm.
shady, if I had been like, oh, well, darling, well, who is this?
Right. Which is what a lot of people do when you get in this
Of course
business.
they do. They're fools. And that's why they
Yo.
lose all day. And that's why I win, because I really genuinely like people. And I do know how to pick winners, so I will say that.
And that's a talent. But you also knew how to bet on yourself. In fact, the book starts in a really interesting place, right? Because you have two different lives. And there are people who know
Yeah.
Bevy as this TV person, as this radio star, and now a best-selling author. And then there are people who knew you from the fashion world and as an
Yeah.
advertising executive and as
Mhm.
someone from Rolling Stone and Vibe.
Mhm.
And you could have lived in either of those. People make their whole careers living in either of those worlds.
Yeah.
But something came to you that I thought was really interesting. You had the big job. You had the job that was paying a lot of money when we wasn't making a lot of money.
Yes.
And you said, I gotta be out. You walked away from Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I just simply wasn't happy. There was a malaise that fell over me in my life. Well, at first, Mark, you know, I didn't even know I was depressed. You know, I just knew that I was trying to get to happy. And I wouldn't have called it depression, but I definitely was trying to shop it away. I talk about being a shopaholic. I definitely tried to sex it away.
Had me cracking up.
Honey.
The fear you had of all the stuff that could happen had me cracking up.
Yeah, I tried to do a lot of things to squelch down that feeling of unhappiness, of boredom, of a real dis-ease in my spirit. And
Mm.
when I got to Milan, the part of the book you're talking about is when I get to Milan and I am living the dream. I have my regular driver. I have my regular corner suite. It's buttercup yellow. You know, I have beautiful gifts waiting for me when I arrive in Milan. And keep this in mind, I'm from 150th Street and 8th Avenue. So this is not like I grew up like this. This is
Right.
really like me working hard and I get to this place. And then I get to this room, the suite, at the first class flight and all the things, and I have on my mink coat, and it's all the things. It's so glamorous. It's like, it's very Diane Campbell. I can't wait to see the movie. That scene in the movie is going to be everything. And I get there and I just plop down on the bed and I start crying. And I say, this cannot be my life. And that's when I made a decision that this wasn't going to be my life. Now, at the time, Mark, I didn't know how it was going to change my life, but I knew I needed to make a change. And the first thing I did was I decided I was going to call myself Bevy versus Beverly.
Right.
And that was the little tiny change. That was a little tiny little signal to myself and to the world that something new was coming. Something was a brewing.
That's such an interesting choice. And I kind of laughed to myself because I didn't know that other people had those kinds of thoughts. When you said, well, I can't be Bev Smith because as a journalist, I can't be B Smith because she's the restaurateur legend, rest in peace. And I had the same thing. I remember when I first started out as a writer and I was like, well, I can't just be Marc Hill. It's too plain. And when you Google it, a million other people came out. And there was a baseball player, some white baseball player named Marcus. So I said, I'll do L. But then when you just say the L, people ignored it, the middle initial. So let me put the whole name. And before I knew it, I was very intentional about it as a way of imagining what my career would look like. And I didn't know, when you read that, you almost gave me permission to feel okay about that. Like I didn't realize that other people made those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I mean, what people call you is very important in life. And those of us who have made these determinations and have made these bold proclamations, you will call me this. There's a lot of power in that. Lisa Ray will not allow you to call her Lisa. She is Lisa Ray.
Right. Okay. Right. I ain't mad at it.
No.
And there's so many lessons, y'all, in this book that I took from it in terms of not just being self-aware and self-critical, but also discipline, patience, timing, all these other things. A moment hits you where you say, yo, this ain't it for me anymore. I need to do something different. But you don't just walk away right away. Like, you understood that there's a process. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to understand that?
Yes, so I'm 33 when I have the mental Milan breakdown, right? I'm 33 years old and I know I need to change my life. And so the first thing I do is change the name. But it takes 5 years for me to go from that Milan hotel room to go to actually quitting my job. At that point, I was at Rolling Stone magazine. And then I quit my job. But it took 5 years because initially, Mark, I didn't even know what the heck I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to do what I was currently doing. So first I had to figure out, well, what's making me unhappy? And I knew it was the fashion industry that was really eroding my spirit, the way that I was working in it. And that's not to say all of fashion is toxic, but the way I was working in it and the pill I had swallowed, it was not healthy for me.
Why?
Bad behavior was definitely rewarded. So now you could never have 10 assistants in 5 years, but certainly I did.
Right.
That's not okay.
You said that in the book. I remember I was a little surprised. You said that you were tough on assistants.
Yes.
And how much of that is like just the culture of fashion where, you know what, I think this is what I think a boss is supposed to look like, and how much of it was just being unacquainted with sort of how to do this?
Well, no, neither one of those things. It was it was two things because I had an assistant since I was like 26 years old. So by the time I get there, I'm good and grown. I'm a seasoned professional at this point. But what had happened was I was in sales, and it's a very high pressure position to be in. And I was not only responsible for my quota, I was responsible for a team's quota. So I oversaw people. So I had to make sure that they brought in the money they were supposed to bring in. And so it was a very high stress thing. And also, too, I was working at Vibe magazine, which is a Black culture magazine. At the time, it was like the quintessential. It was the alpha and the omega of all of those magazines. But still, I had a very tough job of trying to get high-end luxury brands to even see the Black consumer as a viable consumer. I had a lot of pressure on me. And then, of course, I came from the old school of being an assistant, where I remember once my boss asked me after he visited Sweden, he wanted some lingonberry juice. And there was no computer back then. There was no internet when I was an assistant because I was in the 80s. So I had to literally figure out how I'm going to find lingonberry juice for my boss. And you know what I did, Mark?
What?
I called up the Swedish consulate in New York City and said, where is a Swedish grocery store in New York?
Oh.
So I was ingenious and I was really smart and strategic about my gig. And I expected that out of other people. Now, we all know Everybody's different. And so when I was met with people who were kind of halfway lackadaisical about their gigs and had other pursuits and everything, yeah, I would go off. Mm. But I also had less patience because I had no patience for myself either, and so it just became this thing where I was not happy. And so my tone became a little more terse than it needed to be. But I will
Yeah.
tell you this in the redemption story from myself. I would say 8 out of the 10 assistants have all come back to me and said, "You made me a better assistant. You trained me really well. I know how to think on my feet now," things like that. So, it was a tough boot camp, but it worked.
It reminds me of Michael Jordan. When I watch the Jordan doc, I hear
Yes.
Jordan's teammates talk. And he said, I never ask other people to do what I'm not going to do. I don't push them harder than I push myself. But the problem is when high achieving people sometimes work with teams, and I've seen other people struggle with this, like
Mm.
it's hard to understand why they can't just do that. Like, why did the assistant, why did you just call the Swedish consulate?
Right.
It's like, that's what I did,
Right.
and it's hard to get that out of people. It's why great basketball players sometimes don't make great coaches because they can't understand how other people move. And so it becomes its own professional lesson. Were you always this driven? Like, were you like the fifth grader who just had to finish everything on time and start your own business and do all those things?
No, I wasn't. It's what's so interesting about all of that. It's also too, I wasn't raised with the idea that I had to be 2 times as better than white people either. Like I didn't have all of those ideas in my head. What I did get from my parents, the Smitties, is a very strong, severe work ethic. So you're going to do the job. And if you accept the job, no matter how menial or low the job is, you're going to come and you're going to excel at the job.
Mm.
So in that way, yes. Well, I always thought that I was kind of lazy. And then my friends were like, "Well, there's no way that you're lazy because of look at all that you do." And what I realized later on is that I'm not exactly lazy, but what I am is I'm very particular about what I want to put my effort into.
Hmm.
And I didn't know that at the time. But yeah, I don't know how driven I am. I still can't say I'm driven. I will say that I am blessed and I know how to manifest some things. I do know how to manifest some things. And I'm not afraid of work, but again, it has to be something that I want to work at.
Right, but you also know how to create the space to be where you can do what you want. In other words, you're like, okay, sales isn't for me, right? I did it, I can do it, but it ain't for me. Advertising, I'm good at it, I'm successful, but it ain't for me. And then you
Yeah.
figured out what was for you. There was something interesting. I'm sitting here trying to find it. But you basically said something like, at this point you were like 38. You said like, I thought within a year I'd have my own TV show.
Yeah.
You envisioned the next step at some point. You knew what it was going to be. Can you talk a little bit about how you got to know that doing the TV show was your thing and why you thought you was going to get it so quick?
Okay. Well, I have been blessed and fortunate to do the Vibe Awards with Farnsworth Bentley. I
I
did
remember
the
that.
red carpet. It was the first ever Vibe Awards. So imagine, Mark, you are like minding your business. You're making your good six-figure salary as a fashion advertising executive. And then the president of Vibe comes to you and says, "Hey, we're doing the Vibe Awards. Farnsworth Bentley is going to be hosting the red carpet, but we feel like we need a female counterpart for him. Do you want to do it?" Well, okay. Because I'm also the
Right.
type of person that whenever I'm given opportunities, I really do seize them. Like that is definitely my gift. No,
Yeah.
no matter how much fear I may have or trepidation, I'm going to go forth. So I went forth, and guess what, Mark? I was so good.
Oh, I saw it. I remember that. That's so funny. I remember that.
I was so good. And what's so crazy about it is, too, my first time ever on TV was on a national show. It was on UPN, which was a big thing back then. It was a network. And
Yeah.
that was my first foray into TV. Go figure.
So her first book comes from a one pager. Her first TV deal came from a conversation and a request, and it's on national TV. My first TV job was a show called Black Men Screaming in Brooklyn at BCAT. Well, and I had to drive from Philly to Brooklyn back when Fort Greene wasn't Fort Greene and hope my car was there when I came back out. So it's an amazing blessing. But again, you were already in a position to be successful because you'd already been successful in the industry. Did you
Yes.
get the TV bug right away? Did you know that this is
Yeah,
what you
once
wanted to
I
do?
did that, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm really good at that. Maybe that's what I want to do. And so that was really interesting. And the reason why I thought that I could get a TV show so quickly is because I just believed that. I was just like, well, it makes perfect sense. I'm really good at TV. So why wouldn't
Mm.
it be a TV show? And then so why wouldn't they? Like it's so crazy, Mark, when you think about it. It's really ridiculous. It's a ludicrous idea. But the best part about it is that I actually was offered a TV show within like 6 to 8 months of quitting that job. And then
Yeah.
I had to turn it down. There was a show on Bravo called Tim Gunn's Guide to Style. And I was offered the gig to be his sidekick on Bravo. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
But then I got the contract, and because I was a businesswoman, I know how to read a contract. And I was like, oh, well, this is a bad contract. This contract will have me on the side of the bus, riding the bus. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. And they wouldn't negotiate because they didn't know who I was.
Right.
It's so funny. I just recently talked to Andy Cohen about it. And he was like, well, I don't know if you made the right decision. I said, well, Andrew, of course I made the right decision. Because if I had taken the Tim Gunn show, I would have never created Dinner with Bevy. And if I hadn't created Dinner with Bevy, I wouldn't have all these grade A relationships with celebrities. If I don't have grade A relationships with celebrities, then I don't get all the guests on Bevelations. And when I'm doing Page 6 TV, people don't want to talk to me. Or when I'm doing Fashion Queens, I can't get great guests. So yes, I needed to do all of that. Everything is as it should be. That's one of the big lessons in the book too.
Right.
Don't question the way things go down. Everything is as it should be.
No, that's a huge revelation. It's an interesting thing, though, that you had the courage. And maybe it comes from being seasoned in the business or just self-confidence. But everybody in this industry gets offered a bad contract. And most of us take it. And we say, you know what, I'll just take this one. And then the next time around, I'll get a better deal. Or I'll get my name out there and then I'll be okay. And then the king of them all is when people offer you no money and tell you, oh, this is a good exposure for you. This is a good look for you.
Yeah.
And this generation, the generation after me of creatives is starting to say, no, you're going to have to pay me.
Yeah.
But how hard was it? I mean, was any part of you afraid that, you know what, if I turn down this bad contract, I ain't going to get no other contract?
No, because again, I had only been out, I had left Rolling Stone 6 to 8 months prior and I already gotten an offer and I had gone in and done one screen test and they gave me a contract 2 days later. I must be the bomb on the screen. I must be that biatch.
I love that take.
So why would I think it's going to take 7 years, which it took 7 years?
Right.
Well, why would I think it would take 7 years? But yeah, so I kind of like knew that I would just be working in TV. And I have worked steadily in TV since I was offered that job. Now, it took 7 years to actually start making money on TV. And another thing about a bad deal is this. I could have really lived with the idea that maybe the money wasn't right, but there was restrictions on the contract that made it so bad. And that's something that I want to just stop down for a moment and talk to the viewers and just say, it's not just about money. You have to look at all the parameters, all the strings that are attached to projects that you're working on if you're a creative. You know, so many times, especially as Black people, we give away our intellectual property for little or no money. And we've got to stop that. And sometimes we have to sacrifice this shiny opportunity and hold out for something that will find us whole at the end of it. Because how many times are we going to keep hearing the same story about people that feel bitter and jaded and cheated because they signed a really bad deal? And I'm not saying about young people, because young people, you're going to do that. But I was a grown-ass woman, and I had attended NYU and studied business, and I had been a fashion advertising executive for about 2 decades. So I should know better. And I did. And so I passed.
I'm still impressed by that. I got offered a bad deal a month ago, and I passed too. You know, but there's that small party, be like, yeah, but this will pay some bills, or oh, but what if this is my last chance? But it's
never your last chance. Not with all that talent you have. Not with all the talent that you have. You've already proven that you're viable, credible talent, a media personality. And right now, we don't even need these networks to give us jobs anymore. We don't.
That's so true.
It's a whole new world. I'm so glad that I'm still young enough and of the same youthful mindset that I don't feel beholden to these networks. These people are not going to punk me into doing anything because I don't need you the way I once did. Because once upon a time, you needed to be with a production company that had a TV entity, connection and things like that. That's no longer the truth.
That's so true. I want to pivot a little bit. I laughed when I read the book because there's 2 books that anchor this show: The Autobiography of Malcolm X and Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Yes.
Right. And in a lot of ways, those are the 2 books that kind of define my childhood. Right. I grew up reading them both.
I love that.
And I remember being this young teen boy reading Judy Blume saying, I must increase my buzz. And it gave me so much insight into women, into girlhood, into trying to understand different things. And so when I read that in the book, first of all, it made me smile, it made me laugh, and it made me realize just how much we're connected and people are connected in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah.
But I think also people don't appreciate that someone like you, someone who is read as beautiful, someone who is read in the world in a very particular way in terms of being glamorous, etc., had to navigate questions around body, had to navigate questions around relationships, had to deal with the same bullshit that a whole bunch of people have to deal with growing up in this crazy world. And you let us into a little bit of that.
Yeah. But I will say, I was blessed and highly favored by growing up in Harlem. So when you grow up in an all black enclave, so I didn't have body image. I didn't have body image issues because who I am, well, first of all, when you see the books, you'll see the throwbacks. So you'll see body yaddy yaddy was made about me, honey. Okay. Okay. And I gained weight and I'm still shaped up real nice. I still got that form, honey. Okay. So anyway, and so I know these things about myself. But when you grow up in a black environment, you're not being put under that white gaze because
Right.
when I went out into the world and worked in a white corporation and saw white models coming through, the only thing I thought about them is they couldn't get anything going in my community. Nobody would want that. Nobody would want a 6-foot woman that weighed 120 pounds. Ain't nobody checking for that in my community.
Nope.
And so there's value in the way I look in my community. And so that's kind of what fostered my confidence. And also my mom too, you know, a beautiful, fabulous woman who definitely let us know all the great things about ourselves. So, you know, there's that. But, you know, the world will try and foist all their ideas on you.
Right. I guess that's what I mean by body image, that you even have to be in conversation with that, especially
Well, I
going
don't
into...
even have the conversation. It's so funny, Mark, because when I wrote the book, the one thing they did say to me, would you do a chapter on body positivity? I said, no. They said, why not? It's everyone's talking about it. I said, but I don't talk about body positivity.
Right.
I'm positive about my body. I'm not figuring to have a whole bunch of conversation about it. Because the minute you start having a conversation about it, it becomes a thing. Now, you could want to make it a thing, but I'm not going to accept your shit. So you can go ahead and peddle it how you want to. But for me, I'm Bevy. This is my body. I like it. End of story. We're not having a big conversation about it.
Is it harder? I mean, you talked about growing up in, pre-gentrified Harlem where you're surrounded by this. And I grew up in North Philly and West Philly where I again, that was my image of beauty. My image of beauty was you, right? Like the girls I knew looked like you, right? So, but what does it mean now for this next generation who are surrounded by Instagram, and not just Instagram models, but just images of don't nobody look like them, right? Do we have to do something different from this? Is this next generation going to have the luxury of being able to develop that kind of sense of self that we did?
Yeah, but it all starts at the home. On my Instagram, my mom was at my house for the book launch, and my niece was there, my sister, and we took this beautiful photo. And I said, it all comes from her. My mom instilled these ideas into us about how beautiful we really were. And it wasn't like some self-help, you is kind, you is nice. No, it was none of that. It was like, girl, you got some big old pretty legs. Come over here. And, you know, it was like those things. It was like, look how pretty my little girl is. You know, it was very natural and very organic. And guess what happened? My niece, who was 26 years old, who has a butt that like Instagram girls are literally going and paying for. She does not look at those women and she doesn't look at these images and think she needs to do something different about herself. Like she could like feel like, oh, I need to get the tits to go with my ginormous ass, or, you know, I need to concave my waist or something. She doesn't have any of that. So it begins at home because her mother also did what my mom did for us, cataloged her gifts, cataloged her beauty. And one of the things I'm most proud about with my niece is that not only is she's a very pretty girl and lovely girl, but her spirit is divine in every way. And so we need to start doing that for our girls. But there's nothing we can do about once they get outside. But if we build them up in the home, then they can go outside and they might have a fighting chance against this crazy world that will tell you all kinds of negative things about yourself. These folks will tell you everything is wrong with you. Today on the computer, in that beautiful family photo I just described, someone said to me, ooh, but Bevy, your feet is screaming in them shoes. I said, so you looked at 3 generations of women, of Black women, and the one thing you want to talk about is the fact that I have on a 6-inch heel and I'm standing up and my feet is screaming. Really, sir? I said, you must really be miserable. And then I blocked them.
Of course.
Of course.
You got to.
Yeah.
There's been something very interesting about you that I always really appreciated, which is that you're very outgoing, you're connected to people, you're drawn to people, people are certainly drawn to you, but you're also very private.
Mm-hmm.
And then you write a memoir.
Yes.
Talk to me about the process of that, even as a writer, like deciding what to share, what not to share. Like for a lot of people, it's like forcing them to pull back. Like, don't tell them everything.
Yeah.
Was the opposite for you? Like, did they have to push you, or did you have to push yourself to say, okay, I guess I gotta give them. So I gotta talk about this relationship. I gotta talk about.
No.
No.
No, I didn't feel any pressure. I wrote this book exactly the way I wanted to write this book.
Mm,
Literally, I was so, again, blessed. There was no outside interference about this book. It was
mm,
kind of surreal and crazy. I know this is not everyone else's experience, but I literally worked with Ayana Bird. You know Yanni
of course.
from Philly. She was my book doctor. So she received the chapters before the publishing house received them. I sent them
Gotcha.
to Yanni because Yanni was my editor when I had a column at Vibe Vixen called Bevy Says. And
Mm,
Yanni was my editor. And I trust Yanni's editorial sensibility. And she certainly knows my sensibility. And I knew she would be the perfect person to look over everything. But Yanni would look at it, and then I would send it out to the folks, and I would literally not really get many notes. You know what I mean? And it was really great. And one of the best things about working with Andy over the years is that he never interferes in my business. I remember when we had the meeting, I said, well, Andy, how much are you going to be involved in this book? And he said, as much or as little as you want me to be. And I said, okay, good.
that's the perfect answer.
That's a perfect answer. And I never called him about the book. He read the
Mm.
fucking book 2 weeks ago.
So if it's all on you, how did you decide what to share and what not to share? Again, memoirs are always a selective thing, right? We always decide what we want to let the world know and what we don't, whether it's about the fact that we're having sex or not having sex, who we're having sex with or not, what our diet is, where we go, whatever. How did you make those decisions?
I knew that I wanted the book to help people. And I knew I had to be vulnerable in order to help folks because I didn't want to lead with this facade of fabulosity. So I was like, it's very important so that people can see my flaws and my foibles because then people will be, oh, okay, she's just like me. And that's why I wanted to get to the core of Little Brown Bevy. She's just like me. And so that's the reason why I had to put in the part about housing court, losing all of that income and then going broke in the middle of trying to change my life. I had to
Right.
put in the Sam and Croquette story. And then I also had to talk about being a woman who was so hung up on having a man save her. And that I was so focused on that I wasn't even really focused on relationships. And from the outside looking in, it would look like I was very focused on men. But I really
Yeah.
wasn't focused on men. I was really focused on me and how they could help me achieve the life that me wanted. So it really had nothing to do with them. And that's a very selfish way to live. And so I had to also come clean about those things. And I thought it was important to do that because right now we're living in the world where we're all talking about the Birkin bags and we're talking about, marriage is the goal and all those things. And I have nothing against marriage, nothing at all. God bless everybody that's married, especially if you're happily married.
I don't know
However,
too many of them, but okay.
but we're not going to shit on their parade, okay? We're going to
True.
support them and we're going to salute them. But my thing was this: marriage cannot be the goal for women because oftentimes, by the divorce rates, oftentimes it doesn't work out. So if you have a goal that has really, you're only part of the equation, that's a dangerous thing to put all your happiness on someone else. And really, happiness is a solo project. You're supposed to be Beyonce when it comes to pursuing happiness. You can't be the Destiny's Children, darling. You have to be Beyonce. You have to be a solo artist when it comes to pursuing your happiness. You have to get to happy for yourself. And then someone can add to it. That's
Right.
where I'm at now. I want to add to it.
Mm. Speaking of adding to it, what's next then? I mean, is there a chance that tomorrow you'll call Andy Cohen up or you'll call Sirius up and be like, you know what, I'm done. I want to move on to my next phase. I want to be a chef. I mean, like, do you feel completely fulfilled now, or will it get greater later again?
Oh, no, no, no. It's certainly greater later, right? So this book is actually the culmination of my 15-year journey. This used to be considered my new life. It is now just my life. When you Google me, the only stuff that comes up is Bevy Smith, media personality. And that means I fucking did it. When I set out 15 years ago and I quit that job at Rolling Stone, I set out to be this person that I am today. I did it. OMG. High five to you. Mama, I made it. So guess what now? I ain't going to rest on my laurels. I'm a driven person in that way. If I do something, I'm not a person that likes to paint by numbers. I'm not a rote kind of person. So I'm always on to the next. And so in the book, I talk about what's next for me. So what I'm going to do now, Mark, is I'm going to do a show. I'm going to do a fairy godmother show. And this book, Bevelations, Lessons from a Mother, Auntie, Bestie, is actually going to be the platform. It's going to be the catalyst for the show. This is how I'm going to get the show, the fairy godmother show. And we're going to do all the work that we talk about. We espouse in this book, and we're going to take it out into the world and into the field, and we're going to help people manifest amazing things in their lives, make changes, some subtle, some ginormous. But we're going to do that with this show. And I'll do that show for maybe only 5 years or so, because I don't want to be on TV in my 60s because I have other fish to fry. In the meantime, in between time, I recently signed a first look production deal with a television network. So I'm right now developing TV ideas. And then in the book also, if you remember, I said that I wanted to get into art and architecture curation. Well, guess what? Over the summer, a dear friend of mine called me up and said that she wanted to contact some of my friends who are very famous painters. And I said, why? And she said, I'm working on a movie. And I said, oh, you know, in my book, I talk about wanting to be an art curator.
Right.
Can I help you with this? And she said, yes. So I did it. So in the fourth quarter of 2021, you're going to be watching a movie, and it's going to say art consultant Bevy Smith.
Wow. Baby, I don't know what you don't do and what you can't do, but I tell y'all this, never, ever, ever bet against Bevy Smith. But before you go, we got one more question for you. If there were 3 books in your life that helped you or to help us understand you, what are the 3 books that would tell the story of you? If you want somebody to understand you, what would those 3 books be?
I got to be so corny, and it's The 4 Agreements, because that really helped me. It really helped me get my mind right. It helped me become a nicer, better person.
4 Agreements Changed My Life. That is a great, great book. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's called The 4 Agreements, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom.
Yes. And that's what I'm always chasing, is freedom. The other book that I read that changed my life was The Artist's Way. So unlike Marc Lamont Hill, I didn't know I was a creative. And so when I quit Rolling Stone, I had to cleanse myself, and I had to find a way to creativity. And this book really helped me do it. It's a book written by Julia Cameron. And it really does frees you up to acknowledge that everyone really is a creative. Everyone has a creative spark in them, and we just have to light it. So that really helped me.
I love that book. And by the way, just y'all, again, The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity by Julia Cameron. It really does get at that spiritual piece of it. And honestly, I would recommend anybody, even if you're already a creative or even if you don't think you're a creative, that book will help you expand your mind and your spirit to do all kinds of things. Yeah. Even stuff that you don't see as creative work, you'll do it differently after you read that book. And what's your last joint?
Oh, gosh, there's Dr. Seuss, All the Places You'll Go, and also all the Babar books, because I'm going to write a children's book centered around Little Brown Bevy. And it's going to be a mix of Eloise, it's going to be a mix of Babar, and it's going to be a mix of All the Places You'll Go, because Little Brown Bevy is going to be a solo traveler, and she's going to go all over the world. And she's going to mimic me, because I've been to every continent except for Antarctica, and I'm going to get there. But yeah, and I'm a solo traveler. It opens you up in the world when you really go places by yourself, because you're not beholden to what other people want to do, but also you get to see it with fresh eyes, your own eyes, and you're not distracted by someone else. So Little Brown Bevy is going to be a children's book, and she's going to be a solo traveler. And I was inspired by those 3 books.
Oh, well, that's dope, yo. Everybody, make sure you check out those books. So, Bevy, how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, I'm everywhere. Bevy Smith, just Bevy Smith. And then on my website, bevysmith.com, if you want to know where you can find me before my appearances and events and things like that.
All right. And the book is called Bevelations, Lessons from a Mother, Auntie, Bestie. It will soon be, I'm going to name it and claim it the way Bevy do. It's going to be a New York Times bestseller. It's going to be a hit. It's going to be a movie. And it's going to be just another powerful testimony to how much of a force in the world Bevy Smith is. Bevy, I love you. It's good to see you.
I love you.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Good to see you always. Thank you, baby.
Thank you for listening to Coffee and Books. Make sure to follow us on Instagram with the handle Coffee and Books Show. That's Coffee, A-N-D, Books Show. Also, you can buy all the books that I've been discussing here at bookshop.org/shop/Uncle Bobby's, or you can go straight to UncleBobby's.com. That's Uncle, BOBBIES.com.